Hey guys, Matt Allen here. Welcome back to TacticalBassin. Today I want to talk to you guys about mid-size crankbaits. This is just that forgotten genre of baits. It's right there in the middle. Square billing, ton of popularity. Deep cranking, ton of popularity. But there is a whole world of baits right there in the middle that gets completely overlooked. A few weeks ago, Tim and I went out and did that Super Grand Slam. And for those of you that saw that video, we were throwing small cranks. We were throwing those mid-size divers. And we mentioned at the end of that video that we would circle back around and do a video explaining those baits, what they're for, how to use them. And today we're going to do that. So I want to talk to you a little bit about this style of bait. First, let's talk about application. Fall is a phenomenal time to throw these baits, as is the rest of the year, but we're going to focus on fall. The benefit of these baits is that so many people are throwing the square bill this time of year, and rightfully so, because as we've talked about, the bass split. Some go shallow, some go deep. But that mid-size, that smaller bait, typically that round lip, varying sizes, but that rounded lip is a very different action than a square bill. Most square bills are going to have a big, wide kick to them. It's just the nature of that lip shape. Very few of them are tight. Most of them very, very wide. Most of your mid-size cranks are tighter action baits. They don't kick as wide. So when you come in behind people that are square billing or deep cranking, you're right there in the middle. It truly is a different presentation. It's not only a different size, different profile, but it is truly a different movement. And you can trigger a lot of bites. They are especially effective for those guys targeting those, well, for lack of a better term, mid-size fish with a mid-size crankbait. A lot of those fish, 2, 3, 4 pound fish, are just hunting that smaller bait this year. You can match the hatch so well on those fish because they get on those bait balls. And again, you can catch them on a square bill. That's the main way that we do it. But there is a time and a place for switching over and going mid-size. The baits themselves, there's a handful of things you want to take into consideration. You want to pay attention to how wide they kick. And you'll have to play with 2 or 3 baits to get a feel for that. But typically, your flat-sided baits are going to have that tighter kick. That narrower bill is going to have that tighter kick. And then as they widen out, like this is a Teckel Drunker, more squared off, fatter body, that kick's going to get wider. So you want to try and get into a couple of those categories. Something that a little bit wider, something really tight, and then color, of course, but we keep that pretty simple, and then sound. Some of these baits are loud. That's the Norman middle end. That's the one that I caught all my fish on when Tim and I were doing that slam. That's why it was hanging up here on the wall. I'm going to put that one back. So that Norman's got a good sound to it. But you go with something like the fat-free shad. This is the smallest one, the fingerling. The smallest one gets into that mid-size, but it's got that almost tinny sound to it, higher pitch. And then a lot of these baits, I can believe that's the 5A, that's the 4A, these are bombers, dead silent. Dead silent. And then some of them will just be there in the middle. A bait like this just has a single ball in it. This is a rock crawler. The rock crawler is a phenomenal bait. As we transition into cooler water temps, these baits continue to work. A lot of the baits will kind of fade away, especially those wide wobbling, hard kicking baits. They're going to fade, but these tighter action baits, they're going to hang on there a little bit longer, and you can continue to catch reaction fish as other people are putting their boats away and calling it a season. So that rock crawler, it's just got a single ball in it. Just a low, deep sound. So you've got some options. That high-pitched, tinny sound, that in-between, again, that's the Strike King. It's It's right there in the middle, that in between, that's a 3XD. Don't get caught up on all the different baits. Down in the video description, I'm gonna link all the different baits for you. Really, your only consideration is a bait or two that's a wider or tighter wobble, and I don't even care what brands. You can spend as much or as little as you want on this. You know, some of these baits are very inexpensive. Then a bait like that, Megabass Deep X 150, much higher priced bait. Got great sound to it, but it's a much more refined bait. Very tight action, very, very tight action. Phenomenal color schemes, but you're gonna pay a lot more for that bait. All of them work. They just work in different circumstances. You saw Tim and I destroy some big smallmouth on that Deep X line of baits earlier this year. You saw us do that slam. I don't know how many times you guys have seen us catch fish on the little Normans over and over and over. And then that striking, that little 3XD. If you guys think back, remember back in February, Tim and I did a whole run down through Arizona. We ended up sticking a big one on the little 3XD. It pays to just carry a handful. So again, wider wobble versus tight wobble. The different sounds. Don't worry so much about dive depth, because almost all these baits are going to dive in that, say, 5 to 10, 11 feet at the max. So they're all very similar. Some are going to run a little shallower, some are going to run a little deeper, but it's not so drastic. Say you get one that runs a little bit deeper, it's not so drastic that you can't still just beat up the bottom in 7 or 8 feet of water with it. It's not like you're trying to throw a DD22 up there and it's just digging and sticking and everything. And it's not so drastic if you get one that runs 7 or 8 feet and you're trying to run in 9 or 10 that you can't call the fish up a foot or two by throwing some little pauses in there. Keep that in mind. And then color, keep it simple. Something with some ghost to it. Some shad. I mean, I say shad, but just baitfish type colors. And then, of course, craw. Something in craw. That guy. That guy. Now, one thing I will say about this genre of baits, most of them, not all of them, but most of them are a little bit less expensive baits, mass-produced baits, so I tend to upgrade my hardware. I do. Owner Hyperwire Split Ring size 2 is going to be perfect for all these baits. And then almost all of them are going to run a size 6 treble, just across the board. But again, we'll link you that stuff down in the video description. As far as gear goes, you want to adapt your gear a little bit too. Now, I'm going to start with less expensive. For you guys that don't know if this is your style of fishing, although I'm telling you, if you like cranking, you can absolutely hammer some fish with this time of year and for the last couple of months. But if you just want to try it, an inexpensive rod that's going to get you through is that Dobbins Colt. Hopefully I don't stick it in my fan. Dobbins Colt, I paired it up with a Daiwa. It's like a $79 rod, $79 reel, 12-pound line. This rod, the 705 is a very, very limber rod. And it'll do a lot of things. You can throw bigger cranks on it, but you can also get away with throwing these tiny little guys. And you don't have a huge price commitment. But that 705 is enough rod that you can also throw bigger baits on it. So you can do a lot with it. The actual rod that I use day in and day out for it, the IMX Pro, you guys know how much Tim and I love that 845. 843, 1 power lighter, makes a big, big difference when we drop down to those size 6 trebles. It's just a softer rod. And then because the baits are so small, again, this is just me personally, I'm telling you exactly what I use. I use an Aldebaran, which is a pretty costly reel, but the reason why is it's designed to be a finesse reel. I mean, most people are going to drop shot or do something like that with it, throw a tube on it. But I love it for what I call finesse cranking. And mid-size cranks fall right into that category. Because it is designed to be a finesse reel. I can throw these little tiny cranks. I can chuck them into the wind without an issue. So I use an Aldebaran, that IMX Pro 843, and then just either 10 or 12 pound fluorocarbon. And that just comes down to what size fish I think I'm going to be targeting. If I think I'm tangling with smallmouth, then I might stick a 4 or 5 or 6 pound smallmouth that goes ballistic. I'm going to go with a little bit heavier line. If I think I'm just out there having a ball like Tim and I were doing the other day, just mowing down a bunch of just in between size fish, trying to catch those 13 inchers, drop down to 10 pound. It's going to give you another foot or so of dive depth. It's going to open up doors for you. You can reach a little bit more. And then it's, you know, it's limber, and you're not going to break a fish off on 10 pound as long as you're not tying into big fish. Just back that drag off and let them play it. One thing I do, this is me, and I've talked about this in videos before. When I'm cranking like this, I keep a little bit tighter drag. I tighten it up more than I should for the hook set. I'll be working that bait. When that fish eats it, I stick them and then immediately reach up and quarter turn the drag back. And that gets me right where it can run. And I never break fish off. If I leave it light, sometimes you don't get that solid hook set and you end up in trouble. But if I leave it tight, hit them, back it off, there's no time for that fish to react, and I get a strong hook set, and then I get that perfect set for the fight. Makes a big difference. So guys, go out there this fall, try some different baits. Break out of the old baits. Break away, throw square bills. I mean, they work. Do it. Throw deep cranks. They work. But when the going gets tough, get into that mid-range. When it gets cold and those fish start backing down a little bit, they're still on those rock edges, but they're not up on top anymore. Mid-depth cranks can absolutely load the boat. You guys are going to enjoy it. I hope that helps you. If you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. We'll talk to you soon.